He's become radicalized. So many things have been learned about him so quickly. He's become totally radicalized and crazy, and it must have been traumatic because the parents are conservative people, supposed to be very nice people, living in Utah, and the father turns in the son. Boy, that's a tough deal. I actually asked somebody in the FBI, how often does that happen where, knowing even the guilt, that a father will turn in or parents will turn in the son? And he said, almost never.
This is my video update on this Sunday afternoon, September the 14th, coming to you from Limassol, Cyprus. Let's talk about some news, and let's start things off with Trump posting on Truth Social that he is ready to place major sanctions on Russia if NATO countries decide to ban Russian oil. They have to stop purchasing Russian oil and to place 50 to 100% tariffs on China. Those are Trump's demands. And if NATO countries do this, then he said that the United States is ready to place major sanctions on Russia. Trump knows that no countries in NATO are going to be able to do this, right? He knows this. Of course he knows this. Of course he knows this. This is Trump's way of telling the Europeans, I don't want to place sanctions on Russia. I don't want to place sanctions on China, nor on India. Not only the Europeans, but also telling the neocons that he does not want to move forward with sanctions on China and India and Russia, even though the secondary sanctions are more focused on punishing China and India. So Trump puts out this impossible ask, knowing that the NATO countries will never be able to do this. And then he can also go to the neocons and say, you see, I was ready to do your bidding. I was ready to go ahead with big time sanctions on Russia, big time sanctions on China and India. All I wanted was for the Europeans to join us, but they chickened out. Yeah, that's what this is all about. I wonder if the Europeans are understanding the way Trump is stringing them along. So Trump posted on Truth Social a letter sent by President Donald J. Trump to all NATO nations and the world. I am ready to do major sanctions on Russia when all NATO nations have agreed and started to do the same thing, and when all NATO nations stop buying oil from Russia. That's in all caps. As you know, NATO's commitment to win has been far less than 100%, and the purchase of Russian oil by some has been shocking. It greatly weakens your negotiating position and bargaining power over Russia. Anyway, I'm ready to go when you are. Just say when. I believe that this plus NATO as a group placing 50 to 100% tariffs on China to be fully withdrawn after the war with Russia and Ukraine is ended will also be of great help in ending this deadly but ridiculous war. China has strong control and even grip over Russia, and these powerful tariffs will break that grip. This is not Trump's war. It would have never started if I was president. It is Biden's and Zelenskyy's war. I am only here to help stop it and save thousands of Russian and Ukrainian lives. If NATO does, as I say, this war will end quickly and all of those lives will be saved. If not, you are just wasting my time and the time, energy, and money of the United States. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. Blah, blah, blah. That was a long one. Interesting that he says this is Biden's and Zelensky's war. That's a new one. That's a new one. And what is Mr. Trump saying, Badoliak? Why he say this my war? I thought this was Biden's war. Oh my God. Can you imagine if the Europeans actually go ahead with this? Can you imagine if the Europeans say, okay, President Trump, we'll place 100% tariffs on China and we'll stop buying Russian oil. We're ready to sacrifice our entire economies, all of us, as the European Union, as Europe, as NATO. We're ready to sink our entire economies. We're ready to do it. Now you have to place major sanctions on Russia. Can you imagine if Europe actually does that? Trump is sitting in the Oval Office with J.D. Vance, and the Europeans call him and they say, we're ready to place 100% tariffs on China. Actually, we're going to do it tomorrow. Trump would be looking at J.D. Vance going, these people are nutcases. They're obsessed with Russia, J.D. Jeez, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. They're not going to do it. The United States couldn't do it. The United States had to pull back from their tariff sanctions war with China. You think the Europeans will be able to do it? No. No, this is Trump's way of trying to get out of this mess. That's what this is all about. So anyway, that sums up that news topic. And the European Union, they've got another scheme to steal the Russian frozen assets. My God. Just steal the assets, man. Just get it over with. Just take the assets. Take them. Take them. Just kidding. Just kidding. But man, they are trying hard to find a way to steal these assets, but make it so that it's not seen as stealing, right? So their latest scheme is about zero coupon bonds. This is an interesting one that they've come up with, and allegedly all of the all of the finance ministers, not the foreign ministers, all of the finance ministers have been consulted about this scheme, and the European finance ministers, and they think this is doable. That's what they think. This is a way to steal the Russian assets, but not make it look like they're stealing the Russian assets. And you know, this plan is not really, to be quite honest, to be fair to the European Union, this zero coupon bonds plan that they're now cooking up really doesn't have much to do with the Russian assets, to be quite honest. This is a very, very clever way to sneak in Eurobonds. That's what this is. So here's the plan. Here's what they want to do, or what they're thinking of doing. They're thinking of issuing zero coupon bonds, right? These will be backed by the Russian assets, as well as guaranteed by the EU member states collectively. So they're going to issue these bonds. They're going to say these bonds, they're backed by the Russian frozen assets, right? We got this 210 billion or 250 billion in Russian frozen assets. And the EU member states collectively, all the member states, they're going to guarantee these bonds as well. And the money will then be loaned to Ukraine, right? The 200 billion, whatever, will be loaned to Ukraine, and Ukraine pays back the loan when, this is the best part. This is the kicker to all of this. Ukraine pays back the loan when Russia pays Ukraine reparations. That's the plan that they're putting together, that they've put together, and they're very close to approving. So basically what this is that the EU member states will give money to the EU. The EU will then loan the money to Ukraine, or give the money to Ukraine, and that'll be it. That's basically what this is. I'm not even sure where the Russian frozen assets really fit into this. They're saying that the Russian frozen assets are going to be used to back up the 200 billion, but I mean, that's not what's going on here. This is the EU's way of issuing Eurobonds, with the EU member states collectively guaranteeing those Eurobonds, and then the EU is going to give money to the Green Goblin, and that money is never coming back. That money will disappear, because we know that there's not going to be any Russian reparation payments. And that's how they plan to get 200 or 200 billion in assets into their pockets without actually having to steal the Russian frozen assets. And that's how it's going to be for forever, right? That's what they're thinking. We'll pretend that those Russian frozen assets are sitting there in Euroclear. We get our hands on the 200 billion or 200 billion amount, courtesy of the EU member states. The EU member states, they say that they've loaned the money to the EU, which has then loaned the money to Ukraine. And Ukraine never pays any of the money back. And this is just all one giant freaking grift, man. It's all just one grift. The US wants to get their hands on the 200 billion. The EU wants to get their hands on the 200 billion. They all want to figure out a way to get their hands on this money. Because they know that Project Ukraine is winding down. I almost slipped. All right, so that is the latest and greatest scheme from the EU. By the way, on the front lines in Ukraine, it looks like the Ukraine military is retreating from Kupiansk. We are getting reports that the Ukraine military is leaving the city center of Kupiansk, and so expect in the next couple of weeks for the Russian Ministry of Defense to announce the capture of Kupiansk. That is going to happen. Let's go this way. Let's go to the promenade. So yesterday I reported about the pipeline 3.0 that the Russian military executed, going through the pipelines and surprising the Ukraine military, a tactic that they've used in Avdiivka and Sudzha, and now they've used it in Kupiansk. And sure enough, you're now getting reports saying that the Ukraine military is pulling out of the city center of Kupiansk. A major defeat for the Ukraine military in the Kharkov region, by the way. So Poland is closing off, or they have closed off, the border with Belarus, completely closed off the border. They've even closed off the railway lines. Everything's been shut down between Belarus and Poland. We're getting conflicting reports which say this is temporary, but you get other reports saying this is not temporary. They're saying it's temporary because of the Russian military drill, the Russian-Belarus military drill Zapad 2025. And some reports are saying after the military drill, the border crossing will be reopened, but who knows? This may be permanent. This may be the new Iron Curtain, right? Perhaps Poland has just put up the new Iron Curtain, but something tells me that this is temporary. That would be my guess. This is just temporary for the military exercises, as well as another way to take advantage and highlight the foam duct-taped drones that entered Poland, right? To dramatize that just a bit more by closing off the border. So Marco Rubio, he is off to Israel. Yeah, Rubio is making his way to Israel. He had meetings with the Prime Minister of Qatar in D.C., along with J.D. Vance, and I believe the Prime Minister also met with the President of the United States, Mr. Donald J. Trump. Though we don't have any readouts or any Truth Social posts either, actually, about the meeting between Qatar and President Trump. And we don't even have that much information about the meeting between Rubio Vance and the Prime Minister of Qatar. Everything's been very, very quiet. I'm tripping all over the place as I'm walking. I need to be careful. So it looks like the whole strike against Qatar, the trick that the U.S. and Israel, well, the U.S. played on Qatar, and then Israel hit the compound where the Hamas negotiators were located. It looks like they called Qatar in, and they put Qatar in its place. And this whole thing is now being resolved, for lack of a better words, forgotten about. That's pretty much what's going on. And now Rubio, he will be in Israel to coordinate further what's going to be happening as they gear up for a round 2 against Iran, and Israel continues to destroy Gaza City. Horrific images and videos from Gaza City as everything has been going on with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Israel has not let up on annihilating Gaza City, completely destroying Gaza City and whatever's in Gaza City. Just horrific images. So that is what is going on with Rubio, and actually we have one more news topic with the Secretary of State, and that has to do with information that The Intercept has received. According to The Intercept, the U.S. Secretary of State might be getting even more powerful. Keep in mind that Rubio, is he still NSA? I think he is still NSA, and he's Secretary of State. And according to The Intercept, there's a new bill which will give Marco Rubio thought police power to revoke U.S. passports. Rubio has already sought to punish immigrants for speech. New legislation might let him do it for U.S. citizens. So there's a bill that's going to be discussed on Wednesday, and basically what it is proposing is that the Secretary of State, the person of Marco Rubio, he will be able to issue or to deny issuing passports and to revoke Americans who currently have passports. One person will be able to do this. Marco Rubio will be able to decide whether a passport is not going to be issued to someone, or whether a passport that someone holds will be revoked, which means that person will not be able to travel, to leave the United States. And the criteria that's going to be used in this bill, the power that's going to be given to Marco Rubio, is that if this person has provided material support to or for terrorism, material support for terrorism, for terrorist activities, that's going to be the criteria. Very, very open-ended criteria. Huh? If Marco Rubio believes that someone has provided material support for terrorism or for terrorist groups, then that person could have their passport revoked. And they have 60 days to appeal this. If the passport is revoked by Marco Rubio, by the person of Marco Rubio, then they have 60 days to appeal this decision. This could be anything, by the way. This could be student groups that are protesting Israel, or protesting what is happening in Gaza. Marco Rubio may come out with a decision and say, you know what? They're providing material support for terrorism. He could decide that on his own, and therefore revoke the passports of people in this student group. One second, let me pull up the Intercept article and read to you what they're saying here. The bill was sponsored by Brian Mast, Republican from Florida, as part of a larger State Department reorganization. There's going to be a hearing on Wednesday. Mast's legislation says that it takes aim at terrorists and traffickers, but critics say it could be used to deny American citizens the right to travel based solely on their speech. The State Department said it doesn't comment on pending legislation. Seth Stern, the director of advocacy at Freedom of the Press Foundation, said the bill would open the door to thought policing at the hands of one individual. Mast's new bill claims to target a narrow set of people. One section grants the Secretary of State the power to revoke or refuse to issue passports for people who have been convicted or merely charged of material support for terrorism. Mast's office did not respond to a request for comment. And further down in this Intercept article, it says the government even deemed a woman who was kidnapped and forced to cook and clean for Salvadorian guerrillas a material supporter of terrorism in order to justify her deportation. The Anti-Defamation League and the Louis D. Brandeis Center for Human Rights Under Law suggested in a letter last year that Students for Justice in Palestine was providing material support for Hamas through its on-campus activism. So you see where they're going with this, and this sounds like a really dangerous bill. It sounds really bad to put so much power in the hands of one Marco Rubio. And what about when a new administration comes into power? What about when a Democrat administration comes into power and you have a new Secretary of State, someone along the lines of Anthony Blinken, and he can then decide who's providing material support for terrorism or terrorist organizations, and he can start revoking passports. Slippery slope, very dangerous legislation. So let's do an update on the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And we have Tyler Robinson's doppelganger, according to a report from the NYT. What is the NYT saying? After Kirk's killing, suspect joked that his doppelganger did it. Before he was arrested on suspicion of carrying out the assassination, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson sent friends messages showing that he was closely following news about the killing. The day after Kirk was killed, the FBI released surveillance images of a suspect. Acquaintance on Discord noticed that the suspect looked similar to Tyler Robinson, 22, and tagged him jokingly, saying WYA with a skull emoji. Robinson responded that it was just a doppelganger trying to get him in trouble. Another user even joked Tyler killed Charlie. Later that night, about 34 hours after the shooting, Robinson was arrested on suspicion of assassinating Kirk, whose killing sent shockwaves through the political world, according to the New York Times. So basically what the NYT is reporting is that there were messages being exchanged on Discord in a group chat, and they were saying, hey, Tyler, this guy looks like you. And allegedly, the New York Times is saying, according to these messages, that Tyler Robinson was telling the group, oh no, this is just my doppelganger. And then the messages, the New York Times claims that the messages even talked about the rifle and the casings and stuff like that. Actually, the FBI, according to the New York Post, they are now talking to Tyler Robinson's partner, I guess is the word. Partner? I'll say partner. Who's transgender from male to female, Lance Twiggs. And they're questioning Lance Twiggs, who is cooperating with authorities. And Lance Twiggs also had messages, according to the New York Post, from Tyler Robinson talking about the rifle. And the FBI They're trying to put together a motive, according to various reports. And I think we could move on now. Something does not feel right, that's for sure. Anyway, big rally in London in the UK, United Kingdom rally. The Guardian reports that 110,000 people were at this rally. There was another rally that also took place, but from what I understand, a much smaller rally, Stop the Racism rally or something like that. But the big rally was Unite the Kingdom with Tommy Robinson. Elon Musk also called in to the rally. The Guardian says 110,000 people. I've been looking at the video footage. It looks like 1 million people to me. Man, this was a big rally. A lot of UK flags, a lot of England flags. The people at the protests, they were saying prayers. They were calling Charlie Kirk's name as well. Hello.
It's with 4 brand new tires, you get a free car wash.
4 tires? I get a free one.
With 4 brand new tires,
all right.
Free car wash.
Awesome. Okay. Free car wash, not free tires.
Yeah, free car wash.
Thank you. So yeah, big rally in the UK. And you know, I'm curious about the people that showed up in this Tommy Robinson Unite the Kingdom rally, because my understanding of things is that Farage and Tommy Robinson do not get along at all. So I'm just wondering if the 1 million people, at least that's what it looked like to me, if the 1 million people that turned up to this rally, are they going to be supporting reform? Is Farage going to reach out to Tommy Robinson? I don't know. I doubt that. I'm just curious as to whether the people that showed up will be supporting Farage and reform. I believe they will, but still, it's interesting to think about that. Stammer posted on X that people have a right to peaceful protest. It's core to our country's value, but we will not stand for assaults on police officers doing their job, or for people feeling intimidated on our streets because of their background or the color of their skin. Britain is a nation proudly built on tolerances, diversity, and respect. Our flag represents our diverse country, and we will never surrender it to those that use it as a symbol of violence, fear, and division. He is in big, big trouble. I feel a big Zelenskyy curse coming on for Keir Starmer. So let's do some clown worlds and we can wrap this video up, and we'll stick with the UK and we'll turn our attention to Boris Johnson, who is in Kiev, and he attended an event with the president of Finland. And the reports are that Boris Johnson and Alexander Stubb, they got into a fight. That's right, they got into a big time argument as they were talking about Project Ukraine. Boris was whining and complaining, and he's demanding more immediate involvement from the EU and from EU armies into Project Ukraine, to enter Ukraine, the EU armies. And so he was complaining to Stubb about this, and Stubb fired back at Boris Johnson and said, you know what would have been, or what is a good guarantee for Ukraine, for the safety and security of Ukraine? He said membership into the European Union. Obviously, Stubb was taking a jab at Boris Johnson, who was the prime minister during Brexit, when Brexit was allegedly completed, even though Brexit is now being reversed. But that was Stubb's response to Boris Johnson, and Boris Johnson was not happy with that response from Stubb. So Boris Johnson also gave an interview to the Kiev Independent. Boris Johnson calls for European troops on Ukrainian soil, tells Russia to bug off. Yeah, Boris Johnson is pushing very hard for European troops to enter Ukraine, not to wait for the United States for any type of ceasefire or negotiation. Forget about Trump. Just send the troops Europe into Ukraine and just get on with it. That's what Boris said. Just get on with it and put boots on the ground. You go first, Boris. He told the Kiev Independent. One second. He said, we're in danger of a kind of ridiculous chicken and egg situation here, or a trap by Putin, whereby all these so-called security guarantees and boots on the ground, none of that becomes relevant till such a time as there is a ceasefire or armistice, and the conditions for that deployment, if we insist on a ceasefire, may never be met. Johnson's solution, European troops on the ground in Ukraine immediately, without waiting for permission from Moscow or an end to the fighting. Just get on with it, he said, when asked if Europe just needs the courage to cross what is yet another of Russia's many red lines during its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, which amounted to nothing. You need something that's going to flip a switch in the Kremlin's brain and make them realize that fundamentally, strategically, this is over, he said. And although it may be impossible to get Putin out of the bits he currently occupies, the cost of trying to get the rest is going to be too great because the West has asserted its commitment. And the way for the West to assert its commitment would be to say, well, the coalition of the willing will start to arrive. Okay, Boris Johnson. Okay, let's send those European troops into Ukraine immediately. Just get on with it. That's what Boris Johnson's solution to Project Ukraine is. He believes that the Russians would be scared of European forces entering Ukraine. That's what Boris Johnson believes. That if EU forces enter Ukraine, then Russia's going to just say it's over. We've lost. Checkmated by Boris the Clown. Oh man, what else did Boris Johnson say? Johnson is keen to stress that European troops would be there to provide training and logistics rather than fighting, in part because Ukrainians are much better than Western Europeans at fighting the war. But fundamentally, they're going to be there to make the point that Ukraine decides what military forces come to Ukraine, not Russia. Yeah, so Ukrainians will continue to get sent to the front lines, right? They will continue to be annihilated while the European forces sit in the rear and act as a kind of tripwire deterrence force to prevent Putin from moving any further west, right? Okay. Yeah, it sounds like a real solid plan, Boris Johnson. Where do they find these guys? The problem is these guys don't go away either. You know, Boris Johnson just doesn't retire, does he? Nope. He's still traveling to Ukraine, and he's still trying to stir up trouble, trying to send British and European troops into Ukraine right now without any U.S. involvement, any U.S. backstop, without any negotiated settlement. Boris Johnson doesn't care. Just go in right now. Just go in and let's do it. Finally, we have one more clown world, which is that Bidenopolis is having a hard time raising money for his presidential library. Yep, he is struggling to find donors willing to fund his library, Bidenopolis. And the reason he is having a hard time finding donors to fund his library is because the previous donors to Biden's presidential campaign feel duped. That's right. They feel duped because they gave Biden all of this money for re-election. And what happened? Biden was coup d'etat, and the money was transferred over to Kamala Harris. And a lot of the donors They did not like that, and they're saying, no way are we going to now give you money so you can build a presidential library. Biden and a library. Biden and library. Somehow those words just don't really fit, do they? Biden library. Oh my God. Here's what one donor said. I want an $800,000 refund, said Florida-based personal injury lawyer John Morgan, referring to money he raised for Biden that was redirected to Kamala Harris after she replaced Biden as the Democratic nominee in 2024. I don't believe a library will ever be built unless it is a bookmobile from the old days, Morgan added. A bookmobile, he said. Oh, that's great. I like this Morgan guy. Yeah. Give me money. Bidenopolis is using the Zelenskyy model. Give me money. Oh, man. Anyway, that's the video. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and X. Go to the Duran shop. Pick up some merch like what I'm wearing in this video update. There is a link in the description box down below. Take care.